as we sit right now, is really wondering how they want to go about betting both of these games. I mean, listen, we have two games, close spreads. I think there's a valid argument for both sides of the ball in both of these games. As we are sitting right now, we'll kick things off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. This game is sitting 3.5, depending on where you get it, 51.5, 52 on the total. FanDuel PointsBet sitting at 3. BetMGM, DraftKings sitting at 3.5. 51.5 is pretty much what you're getting across the board, except over at FanDuel, where you are looking at 52 on the total. Of course, the Bucs get here by getting by the Saints. A very key play we were talking about before we went on air here. Very key play in that game. Jared Cook. The Saints are up 7. They're driving. He catches the ball over the middle, fumbles, and it was game over from there. The Saints never could recover. I don't believe in momentum. I think that is something that coaches and ex-players love to talk about. But I'll tell you something. If there was such thing as momentum, the momentum was definitely changed on that fumble right there, because the Saints just were clueless after that, and the Bucs played pretty efficiently and were able to get the win in that game. The Packers, of course, getting here pretty easily, again, on another just unbelievably awesome performance by Aaron Rodgers with a banged up Jared Cook. Also, we were correct, guys, in us assuming that Aaron Donald was still hurt. I mean, that was one of the very big things in this as well. Only played about half the snaps in the game. Even when he was out there, he was ineffective. So guy misses a whole half of football in a very important winner go home game, and then doesn't show up on the injury report the next week. Brad, you were talking about even in the Saints game, Brees's wife comes out and says things about him being injured all year. So these injury reports are getting some shenanigans here towards the end of the year as well. But Brad, let's kick things off here. Okay. Bucs, 3.5, depending where you get it. 51.5 seems to be the consensus on the total here. First and foremost, where do you think is the biggest mismatch in this game, as far as, one team's unit, one team's whatever it might be, has an extremely big advantage over the other?
The biggest mismatch, possibly just Aaron Rodgers against the Bucs defense. I mean, it might sound a bit silly given they held him to his by far the worst performance of the season in week 6, when they played 10 points, I think, all in the first quarter, and then they just shut him out after that. But you go back and look at that, and I think there's plenty of excuses to be made that was kind of a freak thing. So just with his weapons, it was Devontae Adams' first game back from a hamstring injury, so there's a chance he wasn't quite fresh, quite ready to go, quite game fit. There was no Alan Lazard as the second option, so suddenly that's MVS as your second option, and he's just not that reliable. And then, they spoke about after the game that they just had no adjustments for the blitz. I don't know why you would go into a game against Todd Bowles with no adjustment for the blitz, but that was the case. And then during the game, the left tackle Bakhtiari got injured. The right tackle went out somewhere, I think, early-ish in the game as well. And then what happened is they threw loads of blitzes at him, and the offensive line just didn't pick it up. Well, whether they confused Rodgers or this offensive line that was, perhaps a little bit makeshift, they confused them, and as I said, they didn't have any adjustments for what to do with that. And I think all of that is different this time around. So, Rodgers has been the best QB against the blitz since 2006. He's been third best against the blitz this year. So I think if they try that again, I think they'll get toasted this time around. I would say that's the biggest mismatch.
So we do have, in both of these games, Brett, we do have, as Brad mentioned, we do have week 6 games against all these teams. So we have something to look back on. If you go back and you look at that week 6 game, Aaron Rodgers, 16 of 35, 160 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, sacked 4 times, hit 13 times. He was blitzed on 21 of his dropbacks. And so, you look at that, and it was basically, if you look at just raw statistical numbers, all four of the quarterbacks, like in the previous game, basically had their worst statistical game of the season. So all when you look back on these games, you're basically getting kind of the worst of all of these quarterbacks. And, from a Brady standpoint, it was mainly because the game was just in hand so incredibly early. Brady, 17 of 27, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was not sacked at all in the game. He was only hit 4 times in the game. Again, didn't really have to do a ton because this game got out of hand fairly early. The Packers even waved the white flag in the fourth quarter in this game as well. If you go back, and I don't know if you remember this game or if you've rewatched this game or you've just studied the box score, which kind of refreshed your memory, is there anything that you are taking from the first matchup between these two teams into your handicapping for this game?
Not really. It was so long ago, and Tampa Bay has really improved offensively since then, which doesn't bode well, I guess, if you're baking that first matchup into your handicapping this week. But I'm not really taking a whole lot from that matchup. It was one game, and it was months ago, so not really. I'm more looking at what these two teams are over the past several weeks and coming into this week.
Brad, as far as that first game goes, I guess the only thing that did stand out to me, and you were talking about that they said afterwards not being able to adjust to the blitz, is the fact that Aaron Rodgers, 2 picks, obviously worst game of the year for that, sacked 4 times. I think that is at least minimally telling. Hit 13 times in that game, blitzed on 21 of his dropbacks. In that, you have to assume 2 different things here. One, that the Bucs are going to try to do at least a lot of the same, where they were able to make the surefire MVP have his by far worst game of the season. And then the other assumption would be that the Packers now have a plan in place for, okay, if they do blitz us as much as we think they are, this is how we're going to counter this.
Yeah, I definitely think they will. And as I said, it was just a weird anomaly, that game. Rodgers against the blitz by PFF grade, 86.9, third best in the league, 5th best passer rating when they send extra rushers. So, as I say, it was I really do think it was just a one-off, banged up weapons, banged up offensive line, and not a good enough plan. And it's just different this time around. And also, it's probably worth mentioning that the Bucs defense isn't who they were at the start of the year. So through the first 8 weeks of the year, they were a top 5 unit in DVOA. And now I'm just looking at since week 10. So just to try and get the last 8 games or so, they're down in, where are they? 21st in drop back EPA allowed, excluding garbage time. So they've fallen off a bit of a cliff. And I don't necessarily know why that is. I don't know if some of that is Vita Vea, who probably won't play from what I can make out. Obviously, he's got a chance to play, but if he will, he's going to be banged up, or he's going to be limited at least because he's not played since week 5.
Kevin White missed 2 games because of COVID. There's that as well.
Yeah. So I'm not saying they're the 21st best defense in the league, but I don't think they're a top 5 unit. I think they're kind of middle of the pack, and they're exploitable by the right team. And let's remember 2 weeks ago that Taylor Heineke went up and down the field on them. Last week, Drew Brees, his leading receiver, he's got a high ankle sprain. He's got surgery on his labrum and his ankle. Brees has come out, said he had plantar fascia in his foot. He had a torn labrum as well, or torn rotator cuff. So, that wasn't an offense that should have scared anyone. We didn't know how banged up they were. That was, as we spoke about earlier, that wasn't on the injury report. But yeah, so I really don't think we should be overrating Tampa Bay's defense based on what they've done recently. So I think they're middle of the pack, and I don't think they're going to have this kind of blitz edge that they had in the first game. And they are going up against the best offense in the league, which is fully fit and firing. The one concern perhaps is Shaq Barrett off the edge. He's got the second most pressures in the league behind Aaron Donald for Tampa, and they can line him up against the backup left tackle Billy Turner. But even he played well last week. I think he was the highest graded lineman on the team last week. So I don't really see a way for Tampa to slow them down. So yeah, I like Green Bay to score some points.
Brett, so you talked about this Bucs offense being a different animal since this first meeting, and specifically since the bye. Since they had, if you remember, they had one of the very late season buys this year. They were one of the last teams, if not the last team, to get a bye. And so since that bye week for the Bucs, They're averaging 34.8 points per game. Brady completing 65% of his passes, 9.2 yards per attempt. He's got a 16-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I think a direct line you can draw to this is one, listen, at the end of the day, if you get a week off whenever you're, Brady's age, and some of these other guys are vets as well. Mike Evans isn't the epitome of health, and Chris Godwin was dealing with pins in his finger and all the stuff like that. So you get a week off to kind of do whatever. But then also, I think you can draw a line to getting an extra week to getting Antonio Brown kind of situated in this offense as well. So what do you see here from a matchup perspective on the Bucs offense versus the Packers defense?
I agree with Brad. I agree with Brad that Green Bay is going to be able to score, but I think Tampa Bay is going to be able to score a lot of points too, and that's why the total is a little confusing to me, which we'll talk about in a little bit. As far as being able to exploit this Green Bay defense, it's right there. I mean, it's taking advantage of this pass funnel of the Green Bay. I mean, we saw Jair Alexander shadow Mike Evans on 67 or 76% of plays in the first meeting. If we expect that to happen, we're going to see Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, if he plays, running wild against these other corners for the Packers, and they're not good. Kevin King and Chandon Sullivan are not good corners. So I think you're going to be able to see Tom Brady take advantage with Godwin and even Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson. These guys have become Brady guys too. So you've got a quarterback here, Brady, who's so good at spotting these opportunities against bad cornerbacks. And I think the snow might actually help them too in this game. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do see a lot of opportunity here for points in this game, and from both sides. And I think the Tampa Bay's offense is not being given the credit it deserves in this spot this week.
Brad, I'm going to give you the same question here. You take a look at this Bucs defense, and at this Packers defense, and listen. So I gave you the statistics of the Bucs since their bye week, but since week 13, this Packers defense actually 8th in yards per attempt against, 5th in passer rating against, their 2nd in coverage grade against since week 13. But you dig a little bit deeper, and you see who they faced along the way. Mitch Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater, Matthew Stafford had to leave the game. They got Chase Daniel. It was the Carson Wentz game where Jalen Hurts came in that game. They got, the banged up Jared Goff last week as well. So I'm not taking anything away from this defense. I'm not saying that they haven't gotten better over the last half of the season here, but you do kind of look at who they faced, and it's certainly not Tom Brady and this crew here. And the other part about Jair Alexander I think is interesting is they were using him in shadow coverage all the way through week 9 of the season. And then since then, for whatever reason, and maybe this was when they started to turn it around at least a little bit in the secondary, he just started playing exclusively on the left side. He doesn't shadow anymore. And so maybe they just figured something out on the defensive side of the ball with that they're just a little bit more efficient if he just plays the side as opposed to chasing a receiver all around. So what do you see here when you match up this Bucs offense against this Packers defense?
Yeah, much the same. I think I wonder if the reason this total is a bit low is because of those improved metrics that you just went through. But I think you also went through the reason they are so low is that they've just faced a very easy schedule. And I was surprised by how well Goff moved the ball last week. He had a banged up thumb. He was missing his slot receiver. He had a banged up left tackle. He was under a lot of pressure as well. And they still went up and down the field relatively well, or better than I expected at least. And I think this is a completely different proposition. Brady's just a much better quarterback, used to this spot. The offensive line, I think, is close to elite. The right tackle Tristan Wirfs is already one of the best tackles in the league. They're strong everywhere. They've got all pros on that line, and they've got the receivers as well. So. Yeah, they'll also be able to run the ball as well. That's the weakness of the Green Bay defense as well, the relative weakness compared to their pass defense. And we know the Bucs like to run the ball on first and second down. They did it too much last week against New Orleans and got away with it. But this Green Bay defensive line is not the Saints defensive line. It's not even close. So, if they're ripping off 5 yards, 6 yards on first down, and then they go to the play action, they start going down the seams to Godwin, to Gronk, to Brait. I can see them having a lot of success. I would say the one place where they might get in trouble is if they get behind. One thing I might want to mention later is the Packers' script in the first quarter. But if they do get down and they have to move away from the run and they get into, say, 3rd and 10, the Packers can put some 4 good pass rushes on the field. They can put the Smith brothers, Kenny Clark in the middle, Rashawn Gary, and they can come after you. And then there is a weakness at right guard because they're on a backup there. So that's probably when Green Bay has an edge, which is quite a small. Right. Set of plays where that might be the case, but that I think that is probably going to happen 5 times, and if they can get pressure up the middle over that right guard spot, Brady's not going to like that. So so I would say if they can run the ball, which I think they'll be able to, I think they will have success. But there is also a game script where they do get behind and are forced to pass a lot, and Green Bay are going to win their share of matchups and get a few sacks. But generally, I think the Bucs are going to move the ball well.
What are the other kind of things when I dug into this first meeting of this game, which I saw, it was actually one of Gronk's best games of the year. Brady only threw for 166 yards, but 78 of those went to Gronk, which is just a little bit odd. He hasn't really been targeted over the second half of the season really at all. And so I went back and rewatched this game, and you go to look because the Green Bay, if you look at the advanced stats, have actually been pretty good against tight ends. So I'm like, why the hell did Gronk kind of have this big day? And really the majority of the chunk yardage he got, he was lined up on the outside against a corner. So like they had lined Gronk up on the outside going up against a corner instead of kind of going over the middle. And they were just taking advantage of him being a big Galufadunk, against these cornerbacks and throw it up into the corner. He was able to catch a touchdown against a corner as well. And so I don't think that's going to work this time around either. So just, I can't really draw a ton from the first meeting from this one, other than the fact that I think we're going to see a ton of blitzing from the Bucs, at least early, and see if it works again like it did the first time. Again, they sacked Rodgers 4 times. They hit him 13 different times. Does it work this time around? And then we're going to have to figure out if there's going to be, if it doesn't, what are going to be the adjustments. We understand that Davante Adams is one of the most versatile receivers in all of the NFL. We saw it last week. They decided, okay, we'll just run these little short routes with him. He catches 9 of 10 targets. He never goes further than like 7 yards down the field, right? I mean, they understand how to manufacture touches for him against the coverage and against whatever the defenses are giving him. And so, Brett, one of the matchups here is likely to be Davante Adams versus Carlton Davis. If you look at Carlton Davis, not a guy that gets mentioned in the same breath as Jair Alexander, but he shadowed Michael Thomas 3 different times this year, held Michael Thomas to 2 horrible games, 1 very below average game in the first meeting. Again, not that we can draw a ton from that, but Adams got 10 targets, only caught 6 of them for 61 yards in a lot of shadow coverage by Carlton Davis in that first game as well. He's allowing just a 56% catch rate on the season. And so you start to wonder if Davis can have some success. I'm saying some success. He's not going to shut down Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to happen. But if he can have some success and Aaron Rodgers does have to go to these second and third receivers, you do wonder, okay, are we really going to see kind of this offense that we've seen all year long? We saw Allen Lazard drop a touchdown pass last week. We've seen MVS drop. You and I, as DFS players as well, has watched MVS drop 7,000, passes over the course of his career as well. So even if they can slow down Davante Adams with a Carlton Davis or maybe some sort of other kind of double team type situation, do you expect this Packers offense to just continue to still roll?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? That was my question last week. My only concern really last week was, can these secondary playmakers for the Packers step up if Jalen Ramsey is able to shut down Davante Adams? And I mean, they had their moments of greatness, and then we saw moments where they are who we thought they were. I mean, these are not great players, so it is a concern if Davis is able to do his job and at least contain Davante Adams, and then Rodgers has to rely on these just MVS and Tanyan it's definitely a concern. But there's also a big difference between Slant Boy, as Carlton Davis calls Michael Thomas, and Devontae Adams. I'm fully convinced now that Devontae Adams is a far better receiver than Michael Thomas. So I'm not all that worried about that matchup, really. I think Devontae Adams is going to get his. And I don't see any reason why Rodgers wouldn't look his way up as often as possible.
All right, Brad, let's get into this thing here. We've kind of talked around some angles here as to how, both teams might be able to fare. We're sitting, as we said, at a 3.5, depending on where you get it, 51.5 on our total. How do you see this thing playing out? What bets have you made? What bets are you looking at? Or what leans do you have?
So I have bet 2 in this one. So I went with first half Green Bay -1.5. And again, so I kind of spoke about the reasons I think Green Bay should have their success. But then if you look at scripted plays, first 15 plays, Green Bay is number 1 in the NFL in passing EPA on those scripted plays. And especially if Todd Bowles comes out blitzing again, I very much like the Packers to do what they've done all year long. And score on the opening drive or two. Even in that first matchup where they got blown out 38-10, they were up 10-0 because the script the script is so good. And they've just done it every single week. So I like them to do that again. And it's -1.5 currently, and also had some over. Over 51.5 would still play. Probably wouldn't play at 52. Just the forecast currently is a little bit uncertain. There's still I think around a 30% chance of snow from what I can see. And yeah, again, that we were spoken about the reasons both offenses should have success. Full game spread, we definitely lean with the Packers -3. I think one thing, just kind of in the kind of a meta wider look, is that Tampa Bay are on their third straight road game. They've had 4 competitive games now because they wanted to beat the Falcons in week 17, whereas Green Bay had the week off. They're very well rested. So they're going to have a big rest advantage. They've got home field. They've got fans in there. Rodgers spoke last week about just how much energy that gave them, how good it was to have them back. And then I think they've got better coaches as well. Arians loves the early down run. He's conservative on fourth down. Bowles plays the most 8-man box in the league. Stop the Packers run game, fine, but you need to stop Rodgers, and that's not what they've always done this year. So I think all these kind of little intangible edges go towards the Packers, and I think they're the better team anyway. They've got the better offense, and I don't think the defense is that far apart. So Packers first half, Packers on the side if you want to go that way, and over 51.5.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is, high 20s. There is going to be at least some level of snow. Is that actually during the game or before the game? We'll figure that out. But it looks like the latest models have between 1 and 3 inches of snow up there in Lambeau. Brett, I am less concerned maybe than I've ever been for a couple of different reasons. One, you take a look, and the reason I ever even consider these super cold weather games anyway is what's the quarterback situation? Is it either a warm weather team or a dome weather team? But we're getting Brady, who has played in these conditions more than just about anybody. It's obviously really, really cold in New England. He's played in, I think it's 70 different games below 30 degrees or something like that, or below 35 degrees. So this is nothing that he is going to be concerned with. And so what I'm actually hoping for, and to play into Brad, because I also like the over in this game, I think we're looking at a mid-50s at minimum game here, is that the television comes on, people see the snow on the field, and they start panicking, and this number goes down, and I hope we get an even more favorable number because people overreact to stuff like that. So that's actually kind of one of the angles I am playing in this thing was I'm going to try and benefit off of people's overreactions to what the TV talks about it. Because the broadcasters, it's frigid here. Look at the snow on the field, whatever. Well, you know what they're going to do whenever they're hyping up this game. And so hopefully we can get a bunch of casual bettors coming in and hitting the under and give us a chance to come in on the over.
Yeah. And what's your magic number with totals?
Yeah, 51.
51.
Yeah.
So, do you think we'll get to 51?
I got it at 51, actually.
Oh, wow.
This was at 50 and a half. This was at 50 and a half just 24 hours ago. And so I think that some of the people realize, like, okay, doesn't really matter here. Let's go ahead and bet the over. This is going to be, but I do believe public is, and we know if there's anything we know, the money has not come in yet from the public. I actually had Johnny Avello on a show that I do last night. Johnny said they have gotten 5% of the handle that they are going to get on these two games as of last night. So the money is still yet to come in, specifically the public money. So I'm betting on this thing dropping down once people see the cold and the snow.
So I should probably wait then, because I love the over in this game. This is my favorite play of the entire week. Just looking at these two offenses, both top 3 in the league in offense DVOA, number 1 in the NFL in points per play versus number 2, both top 5 in the NFL in explosive passes. Two teams that have been able to score effectively and quickly this season. So why is this total only 51.5? It could get lower when the average total for every game this year was like just short of 50. And why is this total 51.5 when the total for this game between these two teams in week 6 closed at 54.5, when at the time this Tampa offense wasn't rolling like it did in the second half of the season? Is it the weather? I would think that's got to be part of it, but no, go ahead.
I was going to say it could be. So they both played like dead nut under teams last week. Like both the Rams and the Saints, they run the ball. Like the top 5 rates in the NFL. Both got good defenses and both got quarterbacks who were injured and didn't throw downfield. And they still both scored 50 points in those games. So now you put literally the best 2 offenses in the league together with 2 average defenses, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, in like the fear of Brady playing in the snow, that's a fallacy that I think we can definitely take advantage of here. Snow, if anything, gives the advantage to the offense and the receivers in the passing game. Defensive backs on slick surfaces aren't able to react as they would on a regular field. And if anybody can take advantage of that, is Tom Brady. He's played in these games for 20 plus years, going back to college. So I love the over in this game with these two quarterbacks against especially Rodgers against a very high variance Tampa defense that's got the best of him the first time around, but he's had this one circled, and he's studied this. He's studied this game a lot, and I think he's going to be ready. So 51.5 seems really low to me.
I love it that we're all on the same page. Like my angle on this as well is also there's going to be points. I understand that if you look at the complete season long metrics on this Bucs defense, that it looks pretty good, but this is just this Packers team, Aaron Rodgers, the way they've been going, LaFleur, the way things have been going with him and play calling. So it's a different animal. They're going to score. The Bucs are going to score as well. The only other play that I have in this one, I did go ahead and take when this number got to 4, I went ahead, and y'all know me, if they're going to give me like these big numbers that I can make into teasers or whatever. So I took the Bucs up to 10 in a teaser with the Bills, and we'll talk about that game here in just a second. But the other thing I have is Lenny. I got Lenny over 41.5 rushing yards. Ronald Jones came out of that game last week banged up. He's not the same. I expect Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette was getting 3-1 on the snaps anyway. He got 2-1 on touches as it was. So if Jones comes in just even a little banged up, then Leonard Fournette's going to get the majority of the carries there. We're only trying to get 42 yards out of this guy against a Packers defense that runs a ton of dime, right? So you can get running lanes here and there that Leonard Fournette should be able to take advantage of. So I only need 42 yards, Brad. So give me 42 yards on Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, playoff Lenny's ready to go.
He is playoff Lenny ready to go.